It may be 85 degrees outside right now and humid as all get out, but that is not going to stop me from making an adorable, knit, colorful patchwork cardigan. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is Abby. I'm a crocheter, a knitter, a sewer, and in my 5 years of knitting and crocheting, I have never made a patchwork cardigan or sweater, and I have all of this super saturated yarn that I have no idea what I'm going to do with. It's not enough to make anything substantial, so I decided I would use these super saturated colors, make a bunch of squares, put it together into a cardigan, and the colors I'm using is a bright saturated pink. It's the color I had the least amount of yarn in. I have a baby pink, a bright purple, and a stark white. Later down the line, I add yellow, which becomes the squares I have the most of, so it kind of becomes like a primary color along with the white, and I later add green. So I actually have footage as far as February. This is the stack going currently. The goal is to make a cardigan. I have not made all of these today. I've probably made one white, one yellow, actually maybe 2 yellows, but I have a big number I need to get to. And I'm hoping to have this done for like Easter time. After knitting some more and figuring out I had a ton of yellow yarn that I could use, and did a recount. 8, 15, 6, 8, 14. The total number of squares that I would need is 68. So I would have 20 squares as the back panel. The front panel would be the same size minus the center column, so that's 16 squares. And then the 2 sleeves were each going to both be 16 squares as well, but later after finishing it, I end up taking off 2 of the columns because the sleeves were way too long. 10, 6, 10. And my total in filming, I didn't clock the number. In editing, I did legit facepalm. I had 67 squares. That left me with 1 square remaining, so I made 1 more yellow square, and with that, it meant I had all the squares I needed. It now came time to lay out the pattern of squares, and I'm gonna be honest, I did no prior thinking to this. There was no art, no concept. I was just laying squares around until it looked right, and it took so long. I wanted things to feel random, and what actually ended up being the hardest was this bright pink. I actually only had, I think, 8 squares of. And so if I wanted it to be on each panel, I could only put like 2 max on each of them, which limited my bright colors to put in between the yellows and the whites, which I was mostly using as like my primary colors, so because there was way more white and yellows than there were of any other color. But I did kind of mix and match, and the back panel was pretty easy. And then I did the left sleeve, which ends up getting changed a bit more. As I was running out of squares, the right sleeve and the front panel took so long. I cut out so many minutes of me just standing and staring at this right sleeve because it was confusing me so much. I also realized that I had all of these right sides up, but I had the sleeves laid out with the intention of folding the top to the bottom and sewing the sleeve together like that. But in doing that, I realized that that would put the wrong sides out, which I didn't notice at the time of putting the squares together. So the effort I put into making sure there were no same color squares touching each other from the body panels to the sleeve panels was a bit unnecessary. Oh, by the way, the dimensions for this square is casted on 20, and I'm doing knitting 1 row, purling the next. They are roughly 6 by 6 inches, although some of them did end up being a lot bigger. in sewing it together, it was very boring, very long, but the sleeves were definitely the hardest part. Sewing the back panel was definitely the easiest. It's just one big square. I was sewing 5 columns together, and then I decided to sew the sleeves into their respective rectangles at first before attaching them to the body. And it was here I realized my mistake, that I laid out the colors with the intentions of the pattern I had created showing, but obviously when you fold it over, and then you have to flip it inside out so the right sides are showing, then the pattern ends up being mirrored, and I ended up having to flip-flop around. Thankfully, with me sewing all of these squares and columns individually and not doing some primary seams, like not having one thick seam going from the sleeve to the shoulder and instead sewing it the way I did, it almost looked invisible wherever I put that final seam, so I could just kind of like flip-flop it around to whatever I wanted without it feeling any different. And by the end of it, I realized how massive my sleeves were. I mean, they were double the length they should have been. I don't know why I thought that my arms were the same length as the body portion. And I guess in doing that, my arms do go below my torso. So like, I thought it was going to be a good length. It was not. I don't know if it was just because they stretched, but like these sleeves were massive. And actually in the time crunch I was on, I ended up leaving them and just tucking the 2 columns that were too big inside and sewing them in there. And it looked great, but it was uncomfortable. It was like itchy with my sensory issues. It was like warm and like warmer than the rest of the cardigan. And it was making my elbows itch where the seams were. So later, in fact, this Wednesday, which should be a few days before this video comes out, I ended up undoing all that sewing I did, sewing the top 2 columns inside the sleeves, taking them out, and then removing those 2 columns completely. I guess they'd be rows. I don't know. I removed the 2 rows of squares, and removing those ended up with me just having 2 columns for my sleeves, which was the perfect length for a cardigan. And that brings us to the reveal. And in typical crocheter fashion, I did not sew in any seams. I've sewn in a few of them, but there's probably still 90% of these squares have seams all over them on the inside. I'm sure they'll get done one day. But overall, I love this cardigan. It is so bright. I don't know if I would ever wear it out in public because these highly saturated colors are not my thing. But it is so cute. It is so comfy. I think in an upcoming video, I'm going to add cuffs and ribbing just to keep the squares from curling. Overall, for my first cardigan, I'm very proud of it. It is very comfy, definitely keeps you warm. Probably not great for, living where I do, but this is making me want to make one for fall time in fall colors because I would wear that every day for the rest of my life. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. And happy Mother's Day. I pray you all have a blessed and beautiful Mother's Day. And I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.